It's just past 5 p.m. across India. I'm Tanvi Taneja, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global, bringing you all the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from London is my colleague, Ollie Barrett. Hello, Ollie.
Hi Tanvi, it's 12:30 here in the UK, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we'll go live to our correspondent in Tel Aviv as the situation in the Middle East develops rapidly and as international pressure mounts over humanitarian concerns. First, the headlines.
Gazans begin to move down south after Israel gives ultimatum to 1.1 million civilians to evacuate within 24 hours. Iran says crimes against Palestinians to receive response from the rest of the Axis. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with Jordan's King Abdullah and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Amman. US aircraft carrier arrives in South Korea in a show of force against North Korea. Pyongyang calls it undisguised provocation. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates the 9th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit in New Delhi, says conflicts and confrontations faced by the world today do not benefit anyone. Death toll continues to rise in the fighting between Israel and Hamas, with more than 2,800 lives claimed on both sides as the conflict entered its 7th day on Friday. Residents in Gaza City were seen carrying their belongings and moving out of Gaza in an attempt to flee after Israeli military called for more than 1 million people in Gaza to relocate south within 24 hours ahead of a planned ground invasion. Thousands of leaflets were dropped by the military over Gaza, calling on residents to flee south of the enclave on Friday within 24 hours. The Israeli military said it would operate significantly in Gaza in the coming days, and civilians should only return when advised. The United Nations stated that it was next to impossible for such a relocation without devastating humanitarian consequences. Now, Israel continues to amass tanks in its southern areas ahead of an expected ground invasion of Gaza. The Israeli army has also set up checkpoints at the southern border. The development comes as Israel has issued warnings to all Palestinian civilians to evacuate Gaza and move down south. Earlier today, explosions flared around Gaza as Israeli airstrikes entered 7th day. The strike started in retaliation to Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel, which has claimed over 1,300 lives. Now, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Friday met with Jordan's King Abdullah and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Amman, just as US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Israel. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He tracks all these developments and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, Gazans have started moving south in what will be a grave humanitarian crisis for the days to come.
Thank you, Tanvi. Yes, they have indeed. There are those thousands of people making that move south after those warnings from Israel. And let's get straight to my colleague, Sarah Coates, who's live in Tel Aviv for DD India. Sarah, what does that movement of civilians from Gaza look like so far?
Hello there, Ollie. Look, I've just seen live pictures actually coming out of Gaza, and they are really disturbing. There are streams of people pouring from the north to the south, people with donkeys and carts, other people in cars, some of them walking. There are mattresses tied to the roofs. It is simply heartbreaking seeing these images, Ollie. And look, this comes after a warning around an hour ago. Hamas put out a statement on its Telegram channel urging these Palestinians in the north of Gaza there not to leave their homes, calling it psychological warfare from Israel. Now, Israel made this announcement around 12 hours ago, saying that there will be extensive military action, military operation there in the Gaza Strip. Now, what we know is this area where they're being told to move from, northern Gaza, it is home to more than 1 million people, Ollie. It has been demolished largely from these airstrikes now from Israel, which have been ongoing for around 7 days. We can tell you that more than 6,000 bombs from the air have been dropped on Gaza. Entire neighborhoods flattened. Looking around at these pictures there of Gaza City, it has basically been reduced to rubble. It looks like an absolute nightmare. Now, health authorities there in the north of the Strip, they are saying they simply will not leave. They cannot leave these people there to suffer. Now, the suffering, let me tell you, it is immense, and it's being made even worse since Israel imposed this full blockade, this full siege of the Gaza Strip in the wake of last Saturday's atrocities, where all of these people were killed in the south. And also, we need to mention that these people, it's believed around 150 people were kidnapped. Right now, Gaza has no running water, no food coming in, no medicine coming in, and no electricity. Now, these hospitals are completely overwhelmed, Ollie. It's believed there are around 6,000 people who have been injured. Of course, that number continues to grow as people are pulled out from underneath the rubble of these destroyed buildings. Hospital employees, health authorities say they simply cannot deal with this load. They are pleading, they are demanding that a humanitarian corridor be opened into the Strip to bring in essential aid, saying that if it doesn't happen, that it will be a death sentence. They're also saying that actually moving patients from these hospitals in northern Gaza is impossible, saying that if this does happen or if these people are left there, it will simply turn into a mass grave. So look, this is the reality on the ground that these people are facing. There are people being seen sitting outside the hospital bleeding. Health authorities say that they do not have the means to treat people. So look, it really is a grim situation. And from what we're seeing and hearing, it is bound to get a whole lot worse.
And Sarah, Israel insists it has to mount a forceful response to those attacks over the weekend. And so what is Israel's response to international calls to minimize civilian casualties?
Well, look, Ollie, this is its response, telling these people in the north of the Gaza Strip that they need to move south. They're saying that they need to do this in order to reduce the number of civilian casualties. Of course, there's always a lot of international pressure on Israel when it comes to these sort of military operations, these sort of wars. So, look, right now we are seeing a joint statement, a joint press conference there between the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and Israel's Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant. Of course, the US is throwing all of its support behind Israel. Ollie, we saw Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He was here in the region yesterday. He's currently touring other parts of the Middle East. But look, you know, Israel says it has nowhere to turn. It has to get into Gaza. It says it has to continue destroying and taking out this Hamas infrastructure, killing these Hamas commanders and militants. And it says, look, it's not going to stop with the military armed wing. It says it will also be taking out these political figures. So it really is a dire situation. Any way you look at it, of course, there's going to be condemnation on Israel. Aid groups, the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency has just come out to say that Gaza has become a hellhole and it is on the brink of collapse. And look, you really only need to see these pictures to understand what they are talking about. But Ollie, let me tell you, the real fear here at the moment, and one of the main reasons, or the main reason you could really argue that Austin is in the region, is to prevent any kind of spillover. We've been talking about the south and this potential ground incursion into Gaza, but there is a lot of of concern about Israel's northern border. Over the past week, there have been constant exchanges of fire over the border there into Lebanon. There's been mortars fired to Israel from Syria. Israel responding, firing mortars back into Syria. And right now, we do know that Iran's top diplomat is in Beirut. He has met with the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, there, and they have both put out statements. Nasrallah has said that this could tilt the axis, and the top diplomat has said to the US that it must rein in Israel to prevent any spillover. Now, just to show the seriousness of this situation, Ollie, there is the biggest aircraft carrier in the world, the US aircraft carrier. It is sitting right now in the eastern Mediterranean, and we just heard then from Austin, another one is on the way right now, steaming across the ocean. So look, the situation is extremely fragile. The region is on a knife's edge, and judging by the calm here at the moment, I've actually got goosebumps coming to you. It's an extremely eerie situation. We've been hearing increased traffic in the sky going up and down the coast. So really, the coming hours and the coming days will be extremely important.
Thank you for that, Sarah. That is DD India's Sarah Coates, live in Tel Aviv. And Sarah was mentioning that press conference from the American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Let's have a little listen in to some of that.
All right, thanks. And so I expect that going forward, they will continue to exhibit that same degree of professionalism that we've seen in the past. But you know, Matt, we've seen this before. The international community fought ISIS, who in some cases was embedded deeply in built-up areas. And that international coalition fought valiantly and protected civilians and created corridors for humanitarian movement, even in the midst of a pretty significant fight. So again, this is a professional force. It is well led, and I have every expectation that it will be disciplined.
Thank you. And for Minister Gallant, have you seen evidence that Iran was directly involved in planning or executing the recent attack on your country, or any signs that either Iran or its proxies are seeking to exploit the situation? And if you do come to see signs of an imminent attack on Israel, are you in favor of preemptive strikes?
Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas is one axis. An axis of evil. Everything is directed generally from Iran. The permission is given by Iran. The money is supplied by Iran. And the ideas are shaped in Iran. Therefore, it doesn't matter if they give or didn't give the permission, but the idea is an Iranian idea. As to the actions, future actions of IDF, I will stay confidential for good reasons.
Thank you.
Suleiman Masada.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for this. House Foreign Affairs Chair Mike McCall said that we know that Egypt had warned Israel 3 days prior to that event, like something like this could happen. We don't know how we missed it. We don't know how Israel missed it. So can you tell us what really the U.S. knew before this attack?
What I can tell you is that if we had known, or if we know of a pending attack against an ally, we would clearly inform that ally. But what we're focused on now, Suleiman, is we're focused on making sure that Israel has what it needs to defend its sovereign territory and to protect its citizens. And the minister and I spent a good bit of time talking today about what those requirements are and what we need to do to urgently meet those needs.
אדוני השר, תודה רבה. זו פעם ראשונה שדרג מדיני עולה לשאלות העיתונאים. אתמול שמענו את הרמטכ"ל גם לוקח אחריות ואומר, אנחנו כשלנו בשמירה על ביטחון אזרחי ישראל. האם יש כן גם אזרחי ישראל שואלים את עצמם, האם כן יש איזושהי לקיחת אחריות מצד הדרג המדיני בעניין מה שקרה בדרום?
אנחנו ספגנו התקפה קשה עם מחירים מאוד כבדים. יהיה זמן לתחקר את העניין הזה. בעת הזו, גם אני, גם המטה הכללי, המטכ"ל וכל לוחמי צה"ל, אנשי השב"כ, אנשי המוסד, משטרת ישראל, כולנו ממוקדים בהתאם להנחיות שנתתי בדבר אחד, לנצח ולהביס את חמאס כפי שפירטתי. זה מה שנקבע, זה הדירקטיבה של ממשלת ישראל וזה מה שיהיה.
And last question from Thompson Theory.
Thanks for doing this. Mr. Secretary, as you just stated, you were involved in the major effort to stop and eradicate ISIS. When you talk to the minister and others, and that experience courses through you, what kind of lessons learned do you feel or might be helpful in this case, especially dealing with that whole urban situation that you just referred to, the evacuation of civilians from Gaza, those kind of challenges? What kind of ideas and thoughts that you have that you can share, please?
Well, thanks, Tom. I would tell you that encountering ISIS, I felt as if we were staring evil in the eye. It was truly evil. And what we've seen from Hamas, it takes that evil to another level. And so that's the first thing that we need to remember and consider. There are a number of things that we talked about today. That there are some lessons learned that we'd be more than happy to share with our allies here in terms of operating effectively in dense urban terrain, creating safe humanitarian corridors, making sure that we're thoughtful about how we shape the battle, and making sure that our objectives are well defined, and so we'll continue to share the lessons that we've learned over the years, and of course, as the Israelis prosecute this fight, we will learn lessons from them, and so I think it's this great teamwork that has served us both well over the years, and we'll continue that.
Mr. Minister, there's been some confusion.
US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin speaking live there, and the United Kingdom is sending military assets to the Eastern Mediterranean as well to support Israel in its war against Hamas. The Royal Air Force aircraft are beginning patrols on Friday to track threats to regional stability. Meanwhile, a Royal Navy task group is being deployed across the region in the coming days to help mitigate the humanitarian crisis. 3 Merlin helicopters are also being dispatched. It comes as the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak spoke again to Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu on Thursday, Friday Israel time, to reaffirm the UK's support. Meanwhile, North Korea has denied that its weapons are being used by Hamas in the attack against Israel. Pyongyang said claims made in some media reports are a bid by the US to divert blame for the conflict to a third country. Some military experts have said that photos from the conflict suggest that Hamas militants might be using North Korean weapons, including a possible F-7 rocket-propelled grenade. Russian President Vladimir Putin, speaking in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, said that an Israeli ground operation in Gaza would result in a serious level of civilian casualties that would be absolutely unacceptable.
We are hearing about plans of preparation for a ground operation in Gaza, but you and I understand, speaking semi-professionally, that the use of heavy equipment in residential areas is a complex matter fraught with serious consequences for all parties. And most importantly, casualties among civilians will be absolutely unacceptable.
And with that, in what is a rapidly developing situation in various different directions, we will hand back to Tanvi in the studio.
Thank you, Ollie. Yes, it's a rapidly developing situation. We also expect you, Chief, also visiting Israel. Thank you, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining me from London. So as the war rages on in the Middle East, evacuation process gets underway by several countries to bring back their nationals safely. India, who has always acted promptly in such situations, brought back first batch of 212 Indian nationals under Operation Ajay in the national capital today. The government launched Operation Ajay on Wednesday to bring back stranded citizens from Israel. This came after Air India and other airlines suspended all its commercial operations to and from Israel as the war began on October the 7th. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell warns China de-risking may speed up if economic imbalances persist. And comic book fans are descending on New York for the annual Comic-Con.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. The European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell urged China to redress economic and trade imbalances, or efforts by Europe to reduce its dependence on China may accelerate far more than is good. Speaking at the capital's prestigious Peking University on Friday, Borrell told students that it is in all parties' interest to find common ground to redress the imbalance in our economic and trade relations. Now, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the 9th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit in New Delhi today. The summit is being hosted by the Parliament of India under the broader framework of India's G20 presidency with the theme of Parliaments for One Earth, One Family, One Future. Speaker of India's lower house, Om Birla, welcomed the speakers and heads of legislatures of the G20 member countries for this summit. The inaugural day of the summit and parliamentary forum will hold two separate sessions today. The first session comprises a discussion on One Earth, One Family, One Future with Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development Goals. However, the second session is on One Earth, Sustainable Energy Transition Gateway to Green Future. So speaking at the inaugural ceremony of the P20 summit, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi called for world peace via diplomatic dialogues amid the ongoing global conflicts. He stressed that a world full of conflicts and confrontation cannot benefit anyone.
दुनिया के अलग कोनों में जो कुछ भी घट रहा है, उससे आज कोई भी अछूता नहीं है। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स और कन्फ्रंटेशन से आज दुनिया संकटों से जूझ रही है। इन संकटों से भरी दुनिया किसी के भी हित में नहीं है। मानवता के सामने जो बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं, उनका समाधान एक बटी हुई दुनिया नहीं दे सकती। यह शांति और भाईचारे का समय है, साथ मिलकर चलने का समय है।
Further, the Indian Premier also said that parliaments are an important place for debate and deliberations. He said that the P20 summit is a Mahakumbh, or picture festival of parliamentary practices of the world.
मेरा हमेशा से ही मानना रहा है कि सरकारें बहुमत से बनती है, पर देश सहमति से चलता है। हमारी पार्लियामेंट्स और ये P20 फोरम भी इस भावना को सशक्त कर सकती है। डिबेट और डेलिब्रेशन से इस दुनिया को बेहतर बनाने के हमारे प्रयास जरूर सफल होंगे।
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. At least 7 people were killed and 16 others severely injured after a van carrying illegal migrants lost control of the motorway in Germany. South Korea says it has protested to China over the suspected forced repatriation of a large number of North Koreans who rights groups say face imprisonment and abuse at the hands of North Korean authorities. South Korea says that any forced repatriation of North Koreans goes against international norms and that it views it as regrettable. Comic book fans gathered in New York City to celebrate the annual 4-day Comic-Con event. Nearly 200,000 of people are expected to attend the celebration of all things pop culture, from comic books to movies and television. The theme of this year's festival is spooky horror. American singer Taylor Swift's film of her record-breaking Eras tour is set to make a mark in movie theaters. Taylor Swift's movie, Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, opens on Friday and has already exceeded $100 million in advance ticket sales across 8,500 theaters in over 100 countries worldwide. And Disney gave a sneak peek into the world's first Frozen-themed land at the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. Set to launch on November 20th, the theme land is based on popular animated film series Frozen and recreates landmarks from the fictional kingdom of Arendelle, including Elsa's Ice Palace. Among other attractions, it will also have a restaurant serving Nordic-inspired food.
Is that right?
So with that, it's a wrap in this edition of DD India Global. Join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram at DD India Live. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.